Okay, so let's jump into media mix modeling. Okay, we just talked about incrementality testing, all of the discussion. Now let's jump into what is marketing mix modeling and what is the practice today, right? As it stands, the world has moved very, very quickly in the last 18 months. There's a lot of open source platforms for marketing mix modeling. And that has really kind of changed and disrupted the marketing mix modeling industry, which was really anchored around 4 or 5 consulting shops. Now it's become much more democratized. The science required for us to take this on has really lowered the barrier of entry. And it's becoming a very different practice today than it was even 18 months back. Okay, so there is kind of a evolving area that would be good for you to understand where it's landing right now. Okay, all right. Number one, if you are going to build a marketing mix modeling practice in-house in your own agency, in your own brand, you have to just embrace the idea that it's an iterative process. It's not like a one and done. It's an iterative process, kind of what we are trying to say. Now, this gentleman, his name is Dr. Payman Sadeh. In fact, he also teaches the class. He's coming to class next Wednesday. He was a chief scientist at Nielsen. He's built thousands of media mix models in his life. He says that MMMs are really a qualified opinion. It's like a doctor's opinion, right? It's not all models are wrong. Some models are useful, right? And so we're trying to build useful models that will help you in decision making and help you in decision support. That's kind of the idea. So it's not like the holy grail truth of what's happening with consumers or what's happening with the business. It's a qualified opinion, as Ellen pointed out, to help you make decisions around things that you're grappling with right now, right? That's the idea. Okay. All right. So what is a marketing mix model? Well, here it's in very simple terms, it's a regression model that regresses inputs to outputs. The inputs typically are media variables and econometric variables, what you spent on TV and search and Facebook, and econometric variables like what is interest rates, what's the weather, what is the housing market trend, what's the seasonality, holidays, all the kind of stuff is the inputs to the media mix model. And typically the dependent variable is some sales outcome that you care about. It could be sales, it could be brand awareness, it could be some kind of brand outcomes that you care about, right? That's what a marketing mix model is. It's an abstract representation of your business, right? What you're trying to do here is take this model and turn this into like a sort of a mathematical model of your business. But the business is a pretty complex thing, right? Consumers or the seasonality, it's a pretty living, breathing beast, right? There is no way one model is going to be able to capture it perfectly. So you think of it as an approximation, a qualified opinion of your business that you can use it for making certain decisions, not all decisions, but certain decisions that you're building the model to answer, right? You'll learn in the next couple of slides, it's an art to build these models. Choosing inputs, if you choose too little inputs, it's underspecified. If you choose too many inputs, it's overspecified. So finding the right level of inputs and kind of rolling up the inputs right is an art, right? It requires business acumen, it requires data science acumen, and bringing those things together into a blended output is kind of where the art is right now, right? And the models are not crystal balls. Models, as I said, some are good, all models are wrong, some are useful. It's really a decision support tool. Okay, if it's not coming through, that is kind of what you want to use it for. Okay, now this is the default mental model for how people think of building models. You prepare the data for modeling, you go through the modeling process, you get a model out of it, and the model is kind of the almighty descriptor of everything that's happening, and then you interpret the results, you make investment decisions based on what the model tells you. This is the mental model that we have as to how it's going to work. But in reality, when you do this, what you find is that you go through this process and you find out that, hey, the CMO kind of comes back and says, this is amazing. I get the results. TV looks great. Let me go to the TV buyer and say, hey, TV buyer, results look amazing. We should spend more on TV. And the TV buyer is going to be like, that's amazing. Give me more budgets. I'm happy to blow it for you. And then she's like, okay, let me go find budgets elsewhere to kind of fund more TV. So she goes to the Facebook person and say, hey, Facebook is decent and it's looking strong, but the model was not exactly built in such a way it can be used, like prospecting versus retargeting, and broad audiences versus engaged audiences and all that stuff. So she's like, okay, this is useful, interesting, but I don't know how to apply it. So it's kind of like an academic exercise for me. Come back when you can have this interpretable for my execution in media, right? So CMO walks over to search and says, search, hey, this looks like search is not really working. Brand search is not really like taking too much credit. And all of a sudden there's walls that get thrown up. And she's like, well, this is stupid. This model doesn't know what we're talking about. There's all these complexities in search. This whole model needs to be rethought through. So I reject it completely. So now there's no place to go with this data, right? It looks like some people like it, some people don't like it, but there's no way to activate the insights coming out of the media mix model. Is a very common occurrence you'll see over and over again. Okay. Now, what are some understanding that you can take with you that will help you navigate the complexities? Now, in about 10, 12, 15 years back, it was just getting data organized so that you can model was the mountain you have to climb. Once you climb that, the marketing data science, the media mix modeling libraries you need to build models was another mountain you have to climb. Then you climb that, you come back and you're like, oh, wait a second, all these channels are so different. Applying these are pretty complex and heterogeneous. You have to climb those mountains eventually to get to value. So value is somewhere on this side of these things. You have to climb these three mountains. Today, data is very conquerable. It's a lot more simple to organize data. There's a lot of data professionals, a lot of data tech, and a lot of data practices in place to kind of really conquer data. This has been much more conquered problem in the industry. So I've found that you can pull together and organize data much more easily than I was able to in about 15 years back. Data science, a lot of open source libraries. The barrier of entry has come down significantly. There's still you require data scientists to be able to like use these libraries and turn them into models, but it's a lot less complex than it used to be. But the heterogeneity in the marketing landscape has really kind of grown as well. The number of channels, the type of channels, how they're activated, like the new influencer models, new social models, all of those channels that we have, it's more complex to apply these insights today in market. Okay. Now, how do you think about the media mix modeling process today? Is that you prepare the data for modeling. There is a modeling process. The one thing that you have to recognize is that the modeling process does not throw out one model. It throws out a slew of models. Okay. Typically tens of thousands of models come out of it. And there are usually about 10, 20, 30 models that look identical from a statistical quality perspective, but have very different decompositions that it will throw out, right? So just that's the reality. What's happening when if you're a brand and you've been working with a vendor so far, they might just pick one model for you. Some human being picked one model because they liked it, and they said, "Well, here is a model, and here is the results for your portfolio." And that's what the MMMs are producing. But if you just tweak the models a little bit, a tiny bit, or even if you just rerun it with random starting points, it'll end up in a very different place, right? So this is a big challenge in the space. And a lot of the dark art of marketing mix modeling is this consulting around how to pick the model to put in front of the clients you work with, right? Now, just knowing that this is the process can help you really understand how to think about it. And triangulating, the idea of triangulation is really key in helping you navigate this complexity and helping you use all the data coming out of it. In fact, the difference in the reads are pretty important to understand uncertainty in the measurement and how you might want to use it for decision making. Okay, now it's iterative. What it means is that every time you build a model, you learn something about it. Like for example, very often we'll build models, be like, oh, I'm spending a ton on Apple search. I'm believing that Apple search will really pop, and it doesn't pop. You're like, what the hell? It didn't pop. I didn't understand it. Why? So you'll go back and you'll probably remodel it with rolling up the input features differently, grouping different channels in some different buckets and trying it again. And every time you go through this process, you will learn something about how to group input features, what kind of hyperparameters to set, and it's kind of an iterative process. So it'll kind of, the models will evolve and get better and better and better as you go. And you'll see that the efficiencies will start to kind of taper. It will start with the 70% R squared and probably get to 85, 87. And every change you make will not move as much, right? You can try to get there. And then you start looking at decompositions and trying to understand how you're now interpreting the media mix and its efficiency in driving business outcomes for you, right? So it's kind of an iterative process is probably the takeaway that I'm trying to leave you here. Most of these modeling platforms, I have Robin as an example here, throw out thousands of these models. Every run will generate thousands of models in Robin. And there is a process to identify the top 10 models or top 5 models or top N models. And that's what we do. We take the top N models that are really good from a statistical fit perspective and use those models to understand the decomp results. And we're going to use the next case study as a way to show you how we do that. Okay. All right. So now we get into the modeling, sort of the steps. First step is data prep. As we talked, remember the class we had last on Monday about taxonomizing the data. You would think about stimulation and response, the different kinds of stimulation. What are the different groups of channels I have? Within those channels, what kind of media, mid-funnel, upper funnel, lower funnel channel tactics I'm deploying? And on the right-hand side, what are the different kinds of outcomes? I'm building market-specific models. I'm building product-specific models. What I'm modeling for conversions or revenue or leads or revenue, all those questions you're asking to kind of put the model together, okay? Let me pause right there. Any questions before I jump into the next section? Going once, going twice. Okay. Now, as I said, shaping input features for MMM is a blend of art and science, okay? Now, I'm going to show you how to think about modeling for short-term outcomes, medium-term outcomes, and long-term outcomes. There's a lot of art behind this. It's an evolving area, but a lot of us are finding success in thinking about the problem this way, okay? Number one, when you take a media mix model and you only model with media variables and seasonality variables, you get a pretty good understanding of short-term business impact. Okay, so here's an example. You take media variables, TV, Facebook, search. You can break this up in different ways. Include seasonality so that it captures trends in the business. With a structure like this, typically you're able to get a pretty good sense of short-term impact. What is the impact of media driving 30-day sales, for example, okay? Now, you can add something called autoregressive variables. Autoregressive variables are you use the output or the sales from last time period, T-1, T-2, T-3, to measure as a predictor of this week's sales. Okay, this is called autoregressive variables. When you add autoregressive variables, you're able to estimate slightly more medium-term impact, like 4-week impact, 12-week impact type of thing. So you're able to get a sense of momentum in the business, and that's kind of helping you kind of identify more sort of medium-term impact. And then for long-term impact, when I work with big brands, they're always asking the question, dude, this is all great, but I'm sort of an auto client. I'm an auto brand, or I'm a retail brand or a CPG. I've been around for a long time. I need to understand the strength of the brand in driving outcomes and the strength of media in driving brand awareness. How do I roll all of this together? Well, there is this idea called HVA modeling, high value actions modeling, where you take a lot of first party data like website actions, app actions, email opens, SEO, Google Trends, all the publicly available data sets you can take, and you identify what's called high value actions index, right? HVA index variables by correlating it to brand surveys you may be running, like brand awareness survey, unaided awareness survey, consideration survey, and you estimate what's called an HVA index. The HVA index is now a proxy for your brand strength. Like as opposed to running surveys all the time, you can have like a synthesized proxy that tells you what is the brand strength, what is the brand awareness today, given all the website actions, the app actions, the email opens that we're seeing yesterday, right? Can I estimate that? Well, you can estimate it by using this as a proxy. And then you take this proxy and you feed that the marketing mix model and see how much strength or how much contribution or decomposition this can absorbs in the model, and that tells you the value of brand in driving outcomes. When we do this for brands, we find that brand drivers or indices absorb about anywhere from 20% to 60% of total business. So if you're a big auto brand, the strength of the brand probably drives 30-40% of the business. If you're an emerging brand, it probably close to 5-10%, right? So you kind of see that. Now you can build another model that understand the strength of the brand based on media. And you can build sort of mixed models or hierarchical models to understand how much is media driving brand and brand driving sales. And you can roll them up to understand overall what's called the full funnel MMM approach for media mix modeling. Okay. Let me take a pause right there. Let's see if there's a lot of content. I know it's pretty dense. You're going to have these slides with you and of course this lecture as well, but let's see if there's any questions about this content.